Hey, Pastor Steve Waldron. I hope you're having an incredible day or night in Jesus. Thank you so much for being with us. Do check our other videos. Join us daily. We're talking about God as creator, and we're looking at the laws of biogenesis, which just means life comes from life, and how the laws of abiogenesis, that life can come from non-life, were defeated by Louis Pasteur in the 1800s, to the point to where Annie Wood Besant, who took over from Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, with the head of the Theosophical Society, was actually putting spells on him because she saw that this was collapsing an atheistic viewpoint. So let's get started. So we're just using this discussion starter, creation versus evolution. Dr. Arlo Mullenpaul, what a great man he was. Recommend the book. It's probably, in my opinion, and I would say it's probably not even close, the best starter book to creation versus evolution, because he's very low-key about it, but every sentence is weighty, has meaning to it. So how does the theory of evolution contradict the law of biogenesis? So the law of biogenesis is that life can only come from life. It doesn't spring from non-living things. So the question of how self-replicating life systems could come from non-living, non-replicating systems is quite the conundrum. It's very difficult. So you remember they used to think you had a bunch of dirty clothes in the corner, and eventually mice would just spring from that. Or if you had rotted meat, that the rotted meat would produce flies or some type of insect. Well, with Pasteur's beaker, that was shown not to be true. That's where the name pasteurization gets from, which I know some don't like that. Anyhow. So how close have scientists come to creating life? Now, we'll say this. In Icons of Evolution, Jonathan Wells does a great discussion on the Miller-Urey experiments, which I still read occasionally in just like secular newspapers as proof of evolution and proof that we've created life. I do find it, again, fascinating that Mary Shelley, writing Frankenstein, was really writing about the Illuminati, but that's a whole different thing. So, Ingolstadt and all this. Although scientists have synthesized amino acids, they have not even come close to creating life. And I do know that occasionally I've read literature and talked to people and read behind people that conflate that say if we've created amino acids, we've created life. And I think there like 14, 17 more steps after that really have life. This could be compared to a person who produced only 3 or 4 bricks and claimed near completion of a 50-story skyscraper. But even if scientists could synthesize life, it would be the result of much planning, effort, and time, a controlled environment, and an intelligent design behind it. So this is not the case of non-living matter spontaneously generating life. So what are some problems encountered in synthesizing life? When chemicals synthesize amino acids in a laboratory, or chemist, they produce a 50-50 mixture of 2 different optical isomers. The 2 forms are known as L amino acids and D amino acids. The L and D indicate the direction which polarized light is rotated when passed through the solutions. These isomers are mirror images of one another and cannot be superimposed, just like a left hand cannot be superimposed on a right hand. Although chemically there's a little difference, biologically the L amino acids support life, but the D amino acids produce death. All living proteins are formed only by L amino acids. Adding just one D amino acid to a chain of L amino acids can destroy the entire chain. The simplest living cells are far more complex than any amino acid or machine ever invented by man. And so that's the wonder of Michael Behe's book. Where's he at? In, the University of Delaware or somewhere at the time. Darwin's Black Box, and then he came out with another one where he answers questions. that the biochemical challenge to evolution, because in Darwin's day, they just thought it was protoplasm, that very small things were very simple. Now we know very small things are irreducibly complex, like with 15 engines, so to speak, propulsion, 60 stomachs, just in a bacteria and stuff. And so that really, things aren't going from a simple to complex, obviously, because the smallest we can see is irreducibly complex. So is life just chemistry? No, consciousness is involved. So life is made up of atoms, molecules, solutions, and chemical reactions. However, when one dies, the atoms, molecules, and solutions are still there. So whereas life involves chemistry, life is more than chemistry. The DNA molecule, which stores coded hereditary information, is extremely complex. And that's what Francis Collins and the Human Genome Project shown several years ago. Many scientists are convinced that such cells could never have come into existence by pure, undirected chemistry. They only have like 3.1 billion different synapses in there. Synapses is not the proper term, but within the DNA. Only DNA produces or reproduces DNA. So 2 scientific experiments disproved the idea of spontaneous generation. Francisco Redi disproved the idea that maggots were spontaneously generated from decaying meat by placing samples of meat in 3 separate flasks. One flask was left open, another was covered with a porous cloth, and the third covered with paper. All 3 meat samples decayed. The odor from the meat in the first 2 flasks attracted flies, which laid eggs on the meat in the open flask and on the porous cloth of the second. How they were not able to get to the meat with the paper. The paper covering provided an odor barrier, so the flies did not lay eggs on or near the third flask. The eggs hatched into maggots. Then Redi showed that maggots came from eggs that the flies laid. Life comes from life and not from spontaneous generation. Even after Redi's experiments, some people thought that spontaneous generation could occur at the microscopic level. They observed that even a sterilized nutrient medium left exposed to the air soon was filled with microorganisms. Louis Pasteur demonstrated, however, that the organisms were introduced into the nutrient on airborne dust particles. He established this by placing nutrient broth in a flask connected to air only through a very narrow, sharply curved tube that was known as Pasteur's beaker. And airborne dust and bacteria were trapped on the interior surface of the curved tube, and the broth remained sterile indefinitely because the air had free access to it. Pasteur's work permanently settled the question of spontaneous generation. So, what are some other ideas proposed for life on Earth? Because of the problems encountered with life occurring by chance, some have suggested that life must have originated somewhere else in the universe and was sent to Earth by some extremely advanced civilization. And so this would be, like, I think Richard Dawkins has said this, and some others as well. I think Sir Francis Hoyle, or Fred Hoyle, may have said that as well. But you've still got life coming from life. You've got an intelligent designer planting the seeds. I'm sitting here looking at Lawrence Richards. This is one of the best books. It's called It Couldn't Just Happen, Faith-Building Evidences for Young People. That is an outstanding book. I think he's got a doctorate from Princeton. And here is my favorite evidence for creation, Creation Ex Nihilo, and that is by Brian Grantham. So anyhow, yes, God created life. Life came from life. Biogenesis, not abiogenesis. God bless you. Talk with you later. See you. Bye-bye.